Hello, this is Nub Tactics as Ilya Rangris. Today I'll be going over the play mechanics for Crystalline Conflict. This video will be much more of a raw how to play rather than a strategy guide, but I will drop some strategies every now and then as it relates to the context of what I'm talking about. Crystalline Conflict, or as many of my friends and I'm sure others have lovingly referred to it as Overwatch in Final Fantasy XIV, is a PvP game mode where the objective is to push the crystal in the center of the map all the way to the opponent's goal point. You have 5 minutes to push this crystal as far towards the enemy goal as you can, and at the end of 5 minutes the winner is awarded to the team that made more progress, going into overtime if the opponent is pushing towards a comeback. When the match begins, the crystal, which I may occasionally refer to as the payload, is bound for the first 30 seconds of the match. At this stage of the game, standing on it will not do anything. Higher level players will often use this time to pre-position and throw harassment attacks at the opponent while waiting for the crystal to unbind. There is no point in standing on the crystal during this phase, and it will also likely expose you to attacks, so I suggest not doing it. Once the crystal unbinds 30 seconds in, it is moved by having your team standing on its zone while the enemy team is not. It will move at the same static speed regardless of how many people are standing on it. As long as both teams have at least one member standing on the crystal, it will not move until one team's members are fully pushed off it or KO'd. Two valid strategies for pushing the crystal when you are winning is to either have the melee player stand on the crystal and the range safeguarding it from a distance, or instead have the ranged players pushing the crystals and the melee running ahead to stop any potential enemies from charging in to stop it. There are checkpoints on each side of the map halfway towards the enemy goal point. Once you have pushed the crystal to the checkpoint, your team must stand on the checkpoint for a short period of time to break the barrier on the checkpoint before they can continue the push. However, breaking the barrier works a little bit differently than pushing the crystal. Unlike pushing the crystal, the pushing players only need a majority of players to progress the countdown on the checkpoint. For example, if your team just wiped out the enemy team and you're counting down on the checkpoint, the lone enemy player can't impede the checkpoint barrier by charging in with a Hail Mary. They can, however, prevent the payload from moving forward after the checkpoint barrier has been broken. At the end of 5 minutes, the team that had the highest recorded push progress towards the enemy goal is the winner, not factoring the progress for the checkpoint break. If the team that is behind is contesting the payload or is pushing it, the game goes into overtime. In overtime, the team that's behind must push the crystal past whatever the winning team's highest progress point was to emerge victorious. The team that's ahead, however, simply needs to control the payload for 3 seconds to win, whether it be by pushing the enemies off the payload or by knocking them all out. If the enemy team catches up to the exact same progress as the winning team before getting wiped out or pushed off the payload, which is pretty uncommon but sometimes happens when the winning team's peak progress is at the 50% checkpoint, then the game will just end in a draw. If the game is already a draw when overtime begins, then overtime functions more as a tiebreaker, with the winner going to whichever team pushes past the draw percentage first, which, again, is usually 50% due to the checkpoint system. As you may have guessed, the most important points of interest in any map are the checkpoints. If you are defending against the push, you are highly incentivized to stop a push right before it reaches the checkpoint. If the crystal is not yet at the checkpoint, then you can stop a push by yourself, no matter how many enemies are pushing it. Once the crystal reaches the checkpoint, however, you can't actually stop the checkpoint from counting down unless only one enemy is pushing it. If you are the aggressor pushing the crystal, your core sub-objective on any given push is to push the crystal just past the checkpoint. Of course, the further the better, but as soon as you get the progress to 51%, the enemy team now has to break past your checkpoint to win the game if it goes into overtime, which is much more difficult than just going for the 50% draw. Along with these main objectives that I just discussed, there are 3 maps that cycle every hour and a half on Earth time. I'll go over the stage hazards in the 2 maps that have them. On the standard map and the volcano map, there are speed tiles along the sides of the map that enable you to move quickly, which is useful for flanking, getting back into a push, or just for running away when you're in danger. On the sky map, there are air slides that will teleport you partly along the map towards the center, with another slide that is only active when you have pushed the crystal past the enemy checkpoint. These slides are one way, so you cannot use them to escape when you're in danger. On the volcano map, eruption events will occur at random, I think. I don't know if there's something that triggers the event, so I'm just going to say that it's random and someone can tell me if I'm wrong. Once the eruptions begins, bombs will start falling from the sky and explode in gigantic plus-shaped AoEs, Bomberman style. Taking a hit from the environment AoEs will deal 30,000 damage that can be reduced with mitigations such as guard. After the bombs explode, they leave behind a core. Each core collected provides a stacking 5% damage buff, and it also reduces the charge time on your limit break by 10 seconds. It may be a viable strategy to run around collecting these orbs to give yourself a notable damage boost and accelerate your limit break, especially if you have an LB that swings the game. Be very mindful of these explosion AoEs and make sure you position yourself away from them in advance, especially if you see where they're going to spawn. You don't want to get stunned right before you have a chance to dodge out of it. On the sky map, turbulence will occur at random, I think. At the end of the turbulence countdown, all players will be launched into the air and take 30,000 damage upon hitting the ground. You can dodge this knockup by guarding before the launch happens. Alternatively, you can chase down a chocobo sign on the floor, which will still knock you up, but it'll allow you to collect a black feather boost and thus prevent all damage taken from the knockup. The black feather boost provides a temporary increase to movement speed and also allows you to attack faster, while reducing the charge time on your limit break by 30 seconds. Only one player may collect the black feather boost, so multiple people on the same chocobo marker will result in only one player getting buffed and the others getting destroyed. After the knockup sequence, tornadoes will spawn all across the map, and getting hit by them will break any active guard and deal 15,000 damage while pushing you away. Guarding is the easiest way to deal with this turbulence knockup mechanic, but it also takes away one of your most important defensive abilities. Be mindful of this when proceeding in combat after turbulence begins. One last note with respect to PvP in general, as well as a quick tip. For better or worse in my opinion, PvP still functions with the general snapshotting system that exists in the Final Fantasy XIV game engine. An in-depth explanation on snapshotting isn't really in the scope of this guide, though I'll try to make resources available in the description. What this means though, however, is that in order to block damage with guard, you need to anticipate and preempt the action. Guarding late may result in you taking full damage from attacks that have already snapshotted onto you, which can get you killed even though it looked like your guard was already up. That concludes this in-depth how to play for Crystalline Conflict. Have fun pushing the crystal, and good luck with your ranked games if you choose to participate in the suffering.